directly affected, where you know somebody or have a family member that is abusing drugs. Believe me, as a community, we see it every day, and a lot of the panelists you'll hear from today see it every day. You are impacted one way or another, whether it be a breaking and entering, whether it be a direct drug case or otherwise. You know, the costs are astronomical, and we could go on and on. But from a community perspective, it is a very important issue. Goals for this evening are simple. First is awareness. We want to make our community more aware of what's going on and what the situation is. And two, let you know what you can do to help. Because let's face it, that's why we want you all here, is for the future and where we go from here and what we can do to help resolve this problem. I think any one of the panelists you're going to hear from today are going to absolutely acknowledge we do not have all the answers, that's for sure. And that is why we are doing something like this evening. Again, appreciate your attendance. So, to accomplish this evening, we're going to do a couple things. First of all, we've lined up a panel of numerous professionals, which I'll introduce in a little bit. We have some parents of loved ones that have been lost to drugs. They're going to speak to you tonight. We also have 2 recovering addicts themselves who are brave enough to be here this evening and tell you their story as well. Most importantly, and the second part of this, is questions and concerns that you may have. So the ending of this, about the last half an hour, we hope will be questions from you. So be thinking of that as we go through this presentation. We want to hear what your questions and what your concerns are. All right, so just how bad is the problem? So what I'm about to show you, for those of you who don't, aren't involved with the system or don't understand the system, from an elected prosecutor, the county prosecutor's perspective, what I prosecute are felony cases. I do not handle the misdemeanors. You're going to hear from Rhonda Fisher, who is the city municipal prosecutor who handles all of the misdemeanors. So what you're seeing are statistics that I'm going to show you for just the felony cases in our county. So a couple things to keep in mind as you go through and look at these slides. They also do not include other crimes. What you see here, for example, in this first slide, is our methamphetamine drug cases for these various years that you see up here. So again, this is just methamphetamine. So here is what's disturbing to us as professionals and should be to you as a community. You can see in the possession cases, so this is possession of methamphetamine. We have 34 cases already this year, and we're only through the first 9 months. You can see from prior years, the highest we had was 13 cases. Illegal assembly, what this charge is it's if an individual possesses chemicals or things to manufacture methamphetamine, including illegal purchases of Sudafed. They can face charges for illegal assembly. We have 25 of those cases already. Some of those have been higher in prior years, but compared to last year, significantly up. Illegal manufacturing is actually, just what it says. It's the illegal manufacturing of methamphetamine. And so far in 2014, we have 20 cases for that. And trafficking is not a big category for us, but about 5 cases of that. And again, those statistics are just through the first 9 months. All right, the next slide I'm going to show you is heroin in our county. Again, this is particularly disturbing. You're going to hear from panelists. You'll hear from Doug Engel from the M.A.N. unit and some others. Heroin is an extremely dangerous and volatile drug. Already for this year, we have 16 possession cases of heroin. And again, it's a very serious problem, even though the numbers aren't what you're seeing in the methamphetamine. Because of the dangerous nature of the drug, we've had numerous overdoses and some deaths in regard to heroin. All right, next is a category that I've just really titled Other Drug Cases. And these, again, are other drug cases that would involve things besides methamphetamine and heroin, and I've listed just a few. It would go on 2 pages if I listed every one, so I'm just giving you some examples of other drugs that we just kind of threw into a category. And you can see that in more recent years, those actually have significantly declined. And when Doug Engel from the M.A.N. unit speaks tonight, he's going to speak to that just a little bit and why that might be. Okay, next two slides you have to kind of look at together, but it's pretty dramatic. So what you see in the blue states are states that have between 0 and 3% of admissions for opiate abuse and dependence. And that is from 2001, and that involved 6.6% of admissions. The primary diagnosis was opiate abuse. This next slide is 2012. The red now shows those same percentages, except that, of course, at this point, the average is 25.2%, so those red states now reflect the opiate abuse in the state of Ohio. The next slide, a lot of people ask questions about incarceration. Obviously, this is a topic that gets disputed quite a bit as to whether incarceration is the answer. This just gives you an idea for the state of Ohio and where our county falls in incarcerations on drug offenses. And I believe, with that, Doug, you're up. Next is Doug Engel from the M.A.N unit.
Good evening. Good evening. Again, with the M.A.N unit, so you understand what the M.A.N unit is, we're a multi-county drug task force. Our mission and our goal is specifically to work narcotics cases. We do all the undercover work, on the undercover buys, the purchases, the handling of confidential informants, and up in your area, we spend a lot of time dismantling methamphetamine labs. What I want to show you tonight, in just briefly, we could do a training for you that would take up to 8 to 10 hours. So we're going to do this in about 10 minutes. What I want you to see is what products look like. This is heroin. This is the epidemic that we're facing today. And part of the reason for that epidemic is because our state legislators attacked the opiate problem with prescription drugs by coming out with the legislation that says that every time a person goes to a physician now, the physician is required to run what is called an ORS report. This ORS report tells that physician what prescription drugs, controlled substances, you are receiving from a different doctor. So if you're jumping from hospital to hospital, clinic to clinic, urgent care to urgent care, by this physician looking at your ORS report, they're going to be able to track that. Thus, they will see this and they will not prescribe that drug to you any longer. So what we have found, though, is that's pushed us into another area of abuse. The other area of abuse now becomes the heroin, the methamphetamine, to offset the prescription drug abuse. That's why we have this epidemic that's just booming out here on the streets with the heroin. What you see in this picture is probably the most common look of heroin is the one in the top left corner, being the what we would call the China White. China White is a drug that we see being purchased and transported into northwest Ohio, mainly into Williams County. Your heroin is probably 90% of it is being purchased in Toledo, Ohio, comes down the Turnpike, comes down State Route 6, 24 Gateway into Williams County. If they're not getting it in Toledo, they're picking it up in Defiance, Lima, Hancock County, Findlay, Dayton area. So it's being transported every day, every single day. This is another form that we're seeing of the heroin. These are actual packets or bindles that we have seized or purchased on the streets here locally. The one to the bottom left, if you can look at that, that's what we call gravel. That's the street name for it. It literally looks like gravel or stone that you would see in your driveway. What will happen is if we intercept, if our road unit intercepts somebody, that is transporting this drug, they'll quickly throw it on the ground, or they'll throw it on the floorboard of their car. It's difficult to see and recognize that this is not actually stones, because it is compressed and it is hard. And they'll do that to hide it from us. Then they'll go back and they'll scrape it back up and reuse it. Okay, just so you have an understanding of what it looks like. Street names for the heroin is Black Tar, Smack, Tootsie Roll, Brown Sugar, Aunt Hazel, Diesel, Rush Hour Poppy, Fairy Dust, H or H, Good H, capital H, or Hell Dust. They come up with other names for it every single day. If we are in a long-term investigation where we're doing telephone intercepts, you would be amazed at what they call it. They may call it a cheeseburger. So we have to sit and listen to these phone calls and determine what exactly they're talking about. So this is something that goes on every single day. Methamphetamine obviously is a big problem in Ohio, and especially in northwest Ohio. This is what it looks like. Generally, the heroin or methamphetamine that we're seeing is going to be to the picture to the right. It's either going to be a creamy color or have a smoke color to it. Generally, if we're seeing the ice, which is the crystals in the center, which would look like chopped up ice cubes, that's more of a refined system that we're getting from the Mexican cartels that is coming in from places like Elkhart, Indiana, and out of the Houston, Texas area being shipped up to us. We do see some of that. What that does, it takes another form or a cleaning process that our local cooks are not taking the time to do. What our local cooks are doing, or I'll back up here, the street names for methamphetamines: meth, speed, crystal meth, crank, fire, glass, chalk, Annie if they use anhydrous ammonia, but we no longer are seeing any anhydrous ammonia labs because they're creating and making their own labs in the one-pot systems. Ice, Crypto, Black Beauty, Poor Man's Coke, Super X. Just some of the street names that if you're hearing your kids or your neighbors or your friends mention anything, this might be what they're talking about. In the M.A.N unit location or area, you can see these are the labs that we have taken off. In other words, we have dismantled these labs. You see the years. This year, we're well up over 80 now. As of last Monday, we took off probably number 82. We dismantled that lab from Williams County. Now, I have to applaud Williams County because it may seem like we take off a lot more methamphetamine labs in Williams County, but it is the direct result of all of you. Because your community has embraced this issue, your hardware stores, your pharmacies, they're all working with us by reporting suspected meth labs or those persons involved in it. In today's society, every time you go in and you purchase a product that has ephedrine in it, you're required to show an ID. You have to show either your driver's license or a state ID, which is then swiped into the system. This system is monitored by law enforcement. We know how many purchases you have made of an ephedrine product. Now I say ephedrine product because it originally started out just for Sudafed, but it's enlarged now to any ephedrine product because that is the active ingredient that they're after to make this meth. In making that meth, they need to have that chemical. Again, tonight, I'm not here to teach you how to make meth I do teach law enforcement officers how to make it. We make it ourselves in training just so our officers understand it. This here is a meth lab. It is quite simple to make. It's quite quick to make. Meth can be started and finished within 45 minutes. Okay? This is a pop bottle, basically a 20-ounce pop bottle. It will always have a 3-tier system with it when it's been completed. The substance in the center is what we call the meth oil. That's what will contain the methamphetamine. That's what they're after, okay? That's the liquid that they're trying to get to. Excuse me. Once they have that, then they will then crystallize it with another form. But again, I want to try to teach you how to make meth. I have enough people in Williams County making meth. So just so you recognize it, that's our goal tonight, is that if you see this, this is highly dangerous. It's explosive. We've had multiple fires in Williams County with multiple injuries this year. So people, if you see these bottles, don't pick them up. Don't collect them. Give us a call. Give your local law enforcement a call and let them come out, and they will call us out, and we will handle this product, because that lithium metal inside there that they're using and taking out of lithium batteries burns at 1,200 degrees Fahrenheit. Where we get the fires and the explosions is by the vessel failures with the metal touching the sidewall of this little bottle, and it's squirting out and then it explodes. Question, I guess, that you need to ask yourself, where all can you hide this pop bottle? Where all have we found this pop bottle? We found it at the Bryan Jubilee in a backpack of a youngster that was walking around with it, cooking, motorcycle saddlebags, you name it, we can find it wherever they put it. Again, just a one pot on the left. In one key thing when they're doing what we call crystallizing it, they'll make a gas generator. The pop bottle will have a hole drilled in the center of it with tubing coming out. If you're seeing this stuff discarded along the roadway, don't pick it up. Call us, because that is highly dangerous for inhalation issues. Again, this may be what you see. This meth lab just happened to be in the ditch by my house. Okay, so it does happen also in Defiance County. It's not necessarily solely to Williams County. The picture to the right is what it looked like in the ditch prior to us entering it and opening it up. And you can see the picture of to the left. That's a gas generator, that's a cooking vessel, and the iodized salt that's part of the cooking process. So if you're seeing items like that, please call us. We'd rather come out and figure out that it's just trash than have somebody become injured. I'd be amiss if I didn't applaud the efforts of Child Protective Services in Williams County along with Defiance County. What we're seeing is an increase, and we've partnered with the Child Protective Services over the past few years. Every time we go into a drug house where there are children, they're with us. They come along with us. We call them, they respond immediately. In Williams County this year, you can see the statistics there on the board. Kids are being affected. That is our main concern to us in the narcotics field. We're seeing this issue where kids are being exposed unwillingly to methamphetamine labs and numerous other chemicals. Again, if anybody would want to contact us direct, here is our contact information. I appreciate your time and your commitment to being here tonight.
Thank you, Doug. Appreciate your comments. All right, next we'd like to play 2 videos for you. Again, these videos were created by Conrad Siebenaller, who joins us tonight, and also Jennifer Harold, who joins us tonight. Both of these individuals are recovering addicts. You can imagine the, I guess, bravery that it took to be here tonight and to create these videos, and we certainly appreciate them doing that in this community effort. Eric?
I'm Jennifer. I've lived in Bryan my whole life. I'm the youngest of 2 older brothers. My addiction started probably when I was about 13. I was hanging out with a couple of childhood friends, and we saw, some people smoking marijuana, and we figured that we should try the same thing, and that's where it took off from there. And then ever since, 13, I was smoking daily for fun. I remember, in my freshman year, it was the, cool thing to go to the high school parties, after school, and, with smoking and drinking. And then I remember at the age of 16, I got into a car accident with one of my friends. And a boyfriend that I was with at the time, came over and said, I'll take care of you. And I figured, he was just gonna, make me some food or, watch a movie with me or something. But he brought over a Suboxone. And I remember I did a half of a half, and I felt good. Couldn't tell you what all happened, but I just know that that's exactly where it took off. And then, after that, it was the Oxycontins that they don't have on the market anymore, because they're just they take people places where they don't want to go. I remember after the Oxycontins left, I tried heroin for the first time when I was probably 17, and I didn't even know what it was. And the first time I did it was when I injected. And once again, I have no idea what happened. One of my friends were with me, and, she did it too, and I could have easily killed her that day because she wasn't used to it. I started injecting probably the beginning of, being 17, and by the end of it, I was a pro. And I remember when my parents, they first found needles in my room, I just said, well, they're the guy that I was with, he was a diabetic, so, I just blamed on him. They're completely oblivious because I was the functional addict. I could hide anything. I could steal without anybody knowing. I could, walk in a straight line when I could, barely feel myself move. After I started injecting, I remember getting my first felony as soon as I turned 18, and that was for burglary. And I robbed a house with the guy that I was with at the time, and and it was for drugs. All the stuff that I did, for the past 6 years was for drugs. I started hanging out with better people and everything after, I got off my second little stage of house arrest, and I was doing good, and, I had a good job, and I had a house. My grandparents gave me a house, and I had a nice guy that I was with, and I wasn't using. And, and as soon as that happened, I was fine, I was good, I stayed clean for a while. It was probably, 8, 9 months. And then I started getting back into it again. And then, I started hanging out with the wrong crowd. I eventually moved back in with my parents because the guy that I was with at the time didn't want anything to do with me. He knew that I was an addict, and he knew that he didn't want that, and he had a child, and he didn't want me around, which I don't blame him at all, because, my brother has kids, and you know, my youngest niece doesn't even, I mean, she knows who I am, but she doesn't. And that's hard to try to gain back their trust because they're so little. And that kind of just pushed me to use even more. My parents, you know, they know that I'm addicted now. And, you know, for them, it's, you know, what do they do? They're lost. They've sent me to a treatment center in Florida, and I loved it there. And, you know, I had to come back because I can't just leave, you know, being a felon. And as soon as I got back from the rehab, I used again. You know, I've been to 5 county multiple times. You know, sometimes it just depends on who you are and what works for you. At this time, you know, I'm 20 years old. My parents want me, you know, they can't stop me. And they don't want to kick me out because they're scared of me to just be on the streets and, you know, be found dead in a ditch. You know, they don't want that. They don't want to remember me like that. You know, so they would let me, you know, go get my drugs and come home, get high, and go to bed, you know. And that's what I would do. I wouldn't go out. I wouldn't party. I would drive to Toledo. I would, you know, drive back in a little time as 2.5 hours to 3 hours, and I would be back home and in bed and, you know, feeling normal, my normal. Towards the end of being 20 years old, I got an apartment with my fiance, and we were using. Our house at the time ended up getting raided, and they found syringes, and they found heroin in the house. We both went to jail. I did 8 months. I did 5 in CCNO, and then I went to the treatment center, or the CTF in Toledo, which is a lockdown treatment facility. You know, and I did my 8 months, and I got out, and, you know, and he was there, and we were doing fine. I mean, everything was good. You know, he proposed. You know, I got my ring. You know, we were planning a good life, and everything was fine. And then it was exactly 2 months after I had gotten out of CTF that Jacob passed away from an overdose, and he relapsed. And that's the thing that people need to realize, is that when you don't use for so long and you go back out and try to use the same amount that you were, that is very deadly, because your tolerance isn't as high as it used to be. And losing somebody like that, someone who, you know, went through the same thing that you did, everything, you know, had the perfect childhood, and the family that loves you and the family that cares for you, and you have all this sober support, and all they want to do is help you, and then you just lose somebody like that. You know, that's hard. And 2 weeks, it was about 2 weeks after he passed away, I relapsed. And, you know, and that should have scared me, that, you know, he relapsed once and passed away, you know. I shouldn't have, you know, did what I did, but I was doing it to mask my feelings. I didn't want to deal with that he was gone. I didn't want to remember him. I wanted to forget all about him. I didn't want to, you know, remember that, you know, I almost had a life started, a clean and sober life. So I masked it with using heroin again. I eventually got caught. You know, everybody gets caught doing what they do, and I went to prison. I got locked up on April 3rd, and got more probation, and, thankfully I got my judicial, so I didn't have to, do another year away from my family. And earlier when I was saying that, rehab sometimes it just doesn't work for people. Obviously rehabs didn't work for me. CCNO didn't work for me. The lockdown facility in Toledo didn't work for me. Prison, it scared the crap out of me. You're around all these people, you see these women in there who are doing life, and this is their house, and you have to, respect that this is their house. And I don't want, Marysville to be my house at all. I don't want to leave my family. I don't want to, put my family through, having to bury me at all. I don't want them to go through that. My parents really loved Jake. A lot of people love Jake, and I've never seen my dad cry until that day. And that was when it was, and like I said, that didn't scare me. It didn't scare me at all that someone so close to me passed away from an overdose, and it didn't scare me to use. But I think prisons, it kind of scared me back on track. You do it for one day at a time. You never say that you're never going to use again, because, that's kind of setting yourself up for failure, because you just have to do it one day at a time, and that's all you can do. You can't think down the road. You can't think to the past. You just have to live for today and do it for today. I'm clean now. I've been clean since April 3rd, and it's nice, and back when I would work and I would be using, I would go to bed at like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, because you have to watch, like an episode of Family Guy or something on TV, and I couldn't get up for work the next morning. And it's like, now if I want to do that, I'm energized, and, I work out every day, and it just feels good, eventually it feels good. You feel better. You don't feel like you're trapped. And that's what I felt like. I was trapped all the time, and I was trapped with my addiction. I was trapped with probation. I hated going to probation all the time, and the only reason why I hated it is because I wasn't clean. I hated trying to, sneak around a urine test, or, try to get out of one, which it never works. But it's just, people sometimes are oblivious of, like, the things that go on. My parents didn't know that I was using probably until about 2 years into my addiction, and I've been addicted for about 6 years. And, I'm 22 now, and I am just too old. I'm young, but I'm too old to be doing this. I can't. I'm tired. And my body has suffered a lot. My liver's taken it hard. You have scars that you don't want to see, but you just have to move on, and still just work hard. Work hard at whatever you want to do, and that's where right now my addiction is. Every day is to go to work and make money and pay off my fines so I can eventually get off of probation. And I'd not so much not think about it, but just look back on it and be like, I finally did this. Like, I finally made it. And if, I don't want to, I do. If I can do it, a lot of people can do it. I'm a normal, person who grew up in Bryan, Ohio, the innocent Bryan, Ohio that has recently gotten horrible. It wasn't like this when I was in high school, so I can only imagine how it is. And losing somebody and them being just so young, and just, it's rough, and people need to be aware that all of this is going on, and it has gotten so much worse. Even being a senior and graduating in 2011, how much worse it has gotten in this town. And it's like back when I was using really hard, you know, I would have to drive, you know, an hour to Toledo every day or every other day. And now it's like I can walk 2 houses down and find, you know, heroin or meth or, you know, crack or anything. And it's sad because this place didn't used to be like this. And it's hard just even looking around and knowing, like, not saying that this isn't a nice town, because it is and it always will be, but now that it's just getting so bad here. I just want everyone to be aware that I hid it for almost 2 years before my parents realized it. And that you just need to keep an eye out and be, I don't want to say question, you know, your children or your loved ones or anybody, but just, you know, make sure that you tell them about, you know, the effects of heroin and how, you know, destructive this can make your life. I don't want to say that, you know, my life is ruined, because it's not, but the past 6 years that I have are gone. I didn't walk in graduation. I was in rehab, you know. I didn't get to, you know, enjoy my senior year because I was too busy getting high. I didn't get the senior pictures. I didn't get the, you know, graduation party. I mean, I'm lucky enough that I even graduated and have a diploma. You just have to be aware. Just always know the signs of what's going on and be very careful, you know, of what you do and what you're doing. And if you're in an active addiction, you know, just let somebody know. And if you're not ready, you're not ready. You know, eventually you'll get caught, or, you know, eventually you'll just take too much that day, and, you know, your family will be really hurt about it. And there's someone always out there to help you, you know, even if you're on probation, you know, your probation officer will be there. And so I remember my probation officer when I got out, you know, he'd never, you know, told me, you know, I mean, I know he was always there, but when he said, you know, call me if you need anything, and he did that because he knew, you know, that I was doing good. He knew that I was changing, and that, you know, in his hopes that I finally got this. And, you know, I may not have it all right now, but I'm getting close.
My addiction started from car accidents, and I was prescribed painkillers, and then it just got worse and worse from there. I couldn't get off of them.
And how old were you when you were in a car accident?
The first one I was around 17, and then I had 2 more bad ones by the time I was 22.
So what kind of injuries did you have from the car accident?
I had busted up ribs and shoulders and concussions, just all around beat up.
Do you remember what you were prescribed?
I've been prescribed Percocets, and I think there was low-dose morphine at one time and a couple other ones.
So did your prescription run out?
Yeah, once it was done, well, I was on them for quite a while, because about every time I got healed, I got hurt again. And then once I was all healed up and I didn't have prescriptions anymore, then I started having really bad withdrawal, and so I started finding them on my own.
At any point, did you know that you were addicted to the painkillers?
Oh, yeah.
And when you said you started to find them on your own, what did you have to do to get them?
Just find people that had them and buy them off them.
Did you have to go out of Williams County for that?
No, I did, though, sometimes. It all depended on who had the best deal, I suppose.
So you would buy other prescription pills off the streets,
Yeah.
to support your habit.
Yep.
At what point did it lead into other drugs?
When I couldn't afford it anymore, I just went to cheaper things, or if something wasn't available, I would do whatever I could get my hands on.
Like what?
I did meth, done heroin, done a little bit of everything, I guess.
How would you get the money to support your addictions?
For a while I was working, but that didn't work, and I've stole money, I've borrowed money Pretty much do anything you got to do.
Why didn't your jobs work out?
Because I started missing work when I didn't have drugs in my system.
Tell me about the relationship with your family in general. You have supportive parents?
Oh, I have awesome parents.
And did they know that you were addicted to prescription medications?
They didn't know for a long time, not until I lost my good job, and then it was pretty obvious.
It was obvious that they knew you were.
Yeah, they could just tell I had a problem. Once I couldn't afford it anymore, then I just kind of went AWOL, I guess.
Did they try to get you in any treatment, or did you try to get into some treatment yourself?
Yeah, I went to rehab. I checked myself out the first night. I've been AA, NA. I've been up here for probation.
And did that work the first few times?
Sometimes it worked for a while, but I always found myself going back to it.
What would you usually go back to?
I usually went back to pills, but then I had a meth problem for a while, and that was towards the end there. That was the worst, I think.
Do you mind sharing what crimes you committed to support your drug habit?
Well, like I said, I stole money from people, mainly my parents. You know, like I said, I did pretty much anything I could to get a hold of it.
And where are you today?
I am doing well. I've been clean. I have a great relationship with my family again. I have a family of my own. I have my own business, and I stay busy and stay healthy.
What do you think worked for you? You didn't go to prison, did you?
No, I was just in jail and search.
And the search program is a lockdown treatment facility.
Yeah, Bowling Green.
And is that what worked for you? Or because you hear that a lot of times you have to go to treatment time and time again before it finally clicks. What was it that worked for you?
You know what? I'm not sure if it was really one thing. I think it was a combination of things. I had a decent amount of clean time where I didn't have access to anything, and that gives you time to get a clear head and think. And then, like I said, the family support's great, and another big factor is my mother's really sick, and I really didn't want to be locked up and have her die while I was locked up. I'd like to spend the rest of her days with her, so staying busy, that's another thing.
Are there drugs on the streets of Williams County?
Oh yeah, I'm sure. I think there's drugs everywhere.
Do you have any advice for the parents out there whose kids might be on some opiate prescriptions for pain, and the parents may not realize that the children could be getting addicted to these medications?
I would say monitor it, and if there is a problem, get a grip on it pretty quick. The sooner you can get stopped, the better, and the least amount of time you have using something on a consistent basis will, I think, give you a better outcome and a better chance of not ending up where I was.
Okay. Do you have any other information you'd like to share with the community at this point?
No, not really. Just keep an eye on your friends and family and try to help any way you can.
Next, we also invited some parents here to share their stories as well about living with a child with addiction and eventually losing those children to addiction. Mr. and Mrs. Juarez.
We're from Etcherton, and my son's name is Marjo Ginneman. We always go to the cemetery before we do a talk because I always figure that Marjo might have a better idea of what to say. He's residing in Lot 9B now in Maple Grove Cemetery in Etcherton because of an accidental drug overdose of someone else's prescription drugs. My son was born on April 16th, 1979. He was that normal kid that used to run up to me with his arms spread apart and tell me how much he loved me, pick me dandelions in the spring, smile on his face all the time. He loved Jesus. He loved his family. He loved church. He loved school. He loved playing ball, sports. He was the normal youth. And as he grew up, when he was a few months shy of being 15, My mother passed away, and I still believe that going into puberty and not knowing how to handle grief possibly could have had a change in his life. And he ended up a few months shy of 15. I found him in a crowd of new friends one night, and he had been drinking a lot. This same child that had went through DARE, that said he would never, ever, ever drink, had started drinking. And I panicked, and I called some of the court systems and tried to get him into some counseling because I was that scared of what could happen. And those first few innocent beers, which so many of our youth think are innocent, that ended up eventually turning into marijuana. He started smoking marijuana. And through this time, I was doing every single thing that I could to try to figure out how to help him. And that same child that said he would never do anything else ended up starting in on pain pills. And then he ended up getting into heroin also. He had moved away by this time, excuse me, down in Indiana. So when he would come home, I would know that he was still using. And that same innocent, beautiful child that had grown up loving me so much started stealing from us, started rebelling against every bit of faith that he had been brought up, started rebelling against everything. And everything I did, it didn't matter. Nothing seemed to help. And he ended up overdosing in Indiana in 2009. And my husband and I went down to Indiana to get him. He looked like an old man down there. I hadn't seen him for probably 4 or 5 months. But I remember the look on his face when we said, we're going to take you back home with us. And we ended up getting him into rehab in Fort Wayne, Indiana at the Salvation Army Rehabilitation Center. And there he started going through rehab and started reconnecting with his faith and reconnecting with all of his family members that relationships had been severed during that. And during that time he started writing in journals. And there is an entry in one of his journals that he started writing a lot of things in his journals, and he started reconnecting with everyone. I don't want to feel this way anymore. Won't you come and save me? You know, society is glamorizing partying. Society is glamorizing drinking, everything. And these youth are listening to all that glamorization. The youth are not hearing what an addict, the words that come from their heart, when they are in so much pain that they don't know what else to do. And as you've heard from these beautiful 2 people in recovery, it's not as easy as what we think. So he went through rehab and graduated after 8 months. He stood up there at graduation on January 17th, 2010, and he said, if I can make it through rehab, anybody can. He said, if you think positive, positive things will happen. If you think negative, negative things will happen. This mother's heart's prayers were answered that day because after 14 years of being off and on that road of addiction, he finally had found healing. He had finally found himself, and he had finally found happiness and joy. He actually had a baby on the way, which he was really excited about. But 3 months after he graduated from rehab, we got a phone call at 4:15 in the morning, 2 days after his 31st birthday. And his girlfriend, all she said was, he's not breathing. On April 18th, 2010, at 5:16 a.m. in the morning, that time went down on a death certificate, on Marjo James Gentleman's death certificate. But that time is also etched in my heart as the time that my family and our whole entire lives were changed forever. Nothing in my life, no Christmas, no Easter, no Mother's Day, no birthday, no day in the rest of my entire life will ever be the same again without my son. But 6 months after I lost him, God put it on my heart to do something. I couldn't go back and wonder the rest of my life what else I could have done with him, because that is what a parent wonders. Every day we struggle with what else could we have done. So I decided maybe I could be his voice now, because he had wanted to start talking to young adults about the dangers of drugs and alcohol. So I am praying that Marjo's death has not only changed our lives, but I pray that it changes other people's lives too. I hope that his death can help our communities bring awareness to the problems of drugs and alcohol out there. I hope that Marjo's death can help families start to talk about addiction, that can help our communities put back the stigma of addiction. We don't need to be ashamed that our son or our daughter or our loved one's an addict. It is a disease. And they fight and they fight and they fight. We have to pray that our community can come together and help our families grow stronger together. I hope that shedding some light on addiction can help everyone to understand it a little bit better. We started a support group at the hospital 2 years ago. And I had a mother ask me recently, if there's anything you could have done different, what would it have been? And without even hesitating, I said I wouldn't have spent so much time being mad at him. Because 4.5 years ago, I did not understand addiction. When he would say, Mom, I love you, I don't want to do this, and I would think it was so easy, well then stop doing it. But I have learned so much. And we've learned so much from the recovering addicts. They don't want to be on that road. As you can see, they don't want to feel that way. They want to be saved. They just don't know how to get out of that trap. So I hope that our communities can come together and can start educating ourselves into what we can do and try to come together to help shed some light on the addiction and to help people in recovery. And if we have to tell our youth 100,000 times over and over and over again, it's dangerous, don't go down that road, then we need to start. Someone asked me recently what age. I said start talking to them in kindergarten or first grade, because if we don't start talking, somebody else is going to tell them. So we just need to come together and work united, stand as one in this battle about drugs and alcohol and get rid of this epidemic, because our youth is our future. And whatever decisions we make now, that's going to have a huge light on the rest of our future. So if we can get to the children now, get to these young adults and convince them not to take that first step on that road of darkness, then maybe 10 years from now, we won't have to have a community forum talking about how bad drugs are.
You know, about 3.5 years ago, we started Never Let Go Ministries. And through these 3.5 years, we've met a lot of people. We've met a lot of youth. We've met a lot of adults. We've heard a lot. We've met a lot of addicts. And, you know, there is a big problem. You know, I had an addict tell me one day that when we was doing the presentation that he could go into any town in Williams County and be in that town 5 minutes and get us any drug we wanted. And you know, that sounds kind of wild, but I know that this guy was telling me the truth because I could see it in his face. You know, me and Mary, we didn't think this is the kind of life that we was going to live. We didn't plan on doing this. We didn't plan on having our ministry. But we'll continue to do our ministry and continue to make the awareness to the youth and to the adults that we need to go to and talk to. You know, it's really hard losing Marjo. It's like Mary said, you know, we lost a part of our family. You know, our holidays aren't the same anymore. You know, his sister and his brother, they're not the same ones they used to be. We used to have so much fun. So don't become a statistic, because a statistic isn't a fun place to be. You know, make sure and keep your eyes open, because there's a lot of things going on in stores. There's a lot of things going on along the streets. There's a lot of things going on everywhere that we're not even aware of. But you need to be aware of it. You need to make yourself aware of it. Tomorrow night here, they're going to have a program that can help you be aware of it, to help you learn about what to watch out for. So please, you know, this attendance here is great. Please come again tomorrow. You know, me and Mary, we have the opportunity to talk to. We try to get to the kids as young as we can. We've been in some schools, we've been in some church youth groups, and you know, you can see it in their face. You know, when they see our presentation, it puts fear into them, and I'm glad that it does, because if they don't get that fear now, they're not going to know what the fear is when they get older and start using it. I just there's just times that me and Mary, we feel pretty strong about our ministry, and we just want to thank this community forum tonight. That's an awesome idea, and I'm glad it finally happened.
I just want to ask everyone to help one another out to prevent another family from standing in an emergency room with their loved one's lifeless body, wondering what else we could have done. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim?
Hello, my name is Jim Phillips. Jacob was the son of myself and his mother, Suzanne. When I came in today, I wasn't quite sure what I was going to say. I hope you can hear me all right. But it's kind of amazing as I sat and listened to Jennifer's story and the parents that preceded me and how things tie together. And much like they explained, Jake was that same kid. He set a record for dare, for money in Defiance County. He was so proud of that. And as I listened to Jennifer, you'll see a note, and it's funny because her and I had no discussion on, I had not seen her video till tonight, and she has no clue of what I'm going to talk about tonight until I met her in the hallway. And what was amazing is when she said they got the apartment. And boy, were they proud of that apartment. They invited her mother and myself over for the grand opening of their apartment, and they seemed to be very happy and on a track that both of us thought, this might be it. As Jennifer said, the probation department visited them, and they were in possession of heroin. After these pictures, you'll see a note that Jake left on my bed. He was very ashamed. He was so ashamed that he didn't want to go out in public. He didn't want to go to Walmart with me. And so we had a talk, to hold your head high and all those things that parents do, and the encouragement. His mother was still trying to get a hold of him. And I told him that one day at a time. I heard Jennifer say that. We had that same talk. But the reason that I had this letter and I kept it was because for the first time he said, I will change not just for me, but he said for me. And I was proud. I thought he put himself in it. Not to change for Grandpa or for Mom or for myself or for the football team. He had put me in that. And that meant so much to me that I kept that. I kept it because of all the things that he had made us proud. Believe it or not, that note was one of the proudest things I ever wrote. He had ever written. And it meant so much. The story I'm going to tell you now, as I thought about this, was 24 hours. And the events that happened in 24 hours. And it kind of piggybacks on what Jennifer had said earlier about that new life and want to be clean. So I will go back to December 22nd of last year. And it was the big annual crab leg dinner for the holidays. Christmas is close. We had started doing this a couple years ago. And we all jump in the car and we're going to Fort Wayne. And it's not a bad day out. Chilly, but okay. And Jacob was typical Jacob. We were singing Christmas songs. We had the Defiance radio on, and we were changing the lyrics to the songs as we went. And he's laughing. And for those of you who know him, I see Jonah and Chris, and I see Adam Singer back there, and I see Lane and Jeremiah. And you would always get because he was happy, and he was laughing, and he was having so much fun. And he was quoting lyrics or lines from the movies. You know, I'm scared of Piter's Coach, because he loved that movie, The Replacements. And we go and we have a great dinner. We teased Jen and told her she could only have salad, and we kind of made fun of this and that. And he took a bunch of saltine crackers and put them in my pocket, because that's what his grandma used to always do, and he said she'd be proud of him for that. And as we were driving back, there was a sudden stop at the light, and his neck snapped, and he said he was going to write that in his book, that we hurt his neck real bad on December 22nd, because he liked that movie Rain Man, and he was making fun of that. And I remember when we got home, he came to me and he gave me the biggest hug, and he said, you know, that's how I want it all the time, you know. And I said, I know you do. I know you do, Jake. He thanked me, and he said he was going to go over and hang out with some friends, but he'd be home early. And I said, okay. And sure to his word, he was back, and the next day he got up, and I was outside taking care of things with the dogs, yard work and such. And he came out on the deck to tease the dogs and get them all wound up like normal. And he was asking some questions about life, and he had wanted to go to culinary school. And Mr. and Mr. Kilgallen, Mr. Kilgallen, Larry, and Bill both had tried to help him, and he had the opportunity to go to Florida or California. They have relatives. And he was all excited about that. And he also, believe it or not, had gotten to the point where I want to think about playing ball again. And we were laughing because I said, well, you can either cook for the whole team or they'll rib you about being a cook and you'll have to play harder. And he would laugh in his way. And he asked, you know, how do you know when you love someone it's for life? And I said, Jake, I don't know. I just know that I love you and I love you for life, but I can't tell you how you know that. And the reason he was asking this is because, as Jen said, he had given her a ring that weekend. And as Jen knows, that's all I heard about. Dad, is it going to be here on time? Because it was supposed to come and it had to be here. And so he was all happy about that morning. And then it suddenly shifted, the conversation, and he said that he wanted to do his laundry. He was going to watch a little football. And he went in the house to eat. And he did. He started his laundry. It's typical. There's nothing really out of the ordinary. In fact, I'm happy that he seemed to be okay. And it wasn't long after that some presents arrived at the door. And typical Jake, although 21 years old, he's asking, Dad, can I open some Christmas presents early? And I said, well, I don't see the harm in that. So he did, and he was all happy. And he put the clothes on that his mother had bought, and I styled, and he was coming down the steps like a model, and it was all kind of funny. I went outside to start some work again. And probably not long after that, this is getting into the afternoon, Jake walked out and said he was going to go see some friends for a little bit, but he'd be back to watch the Ohio University East Carolina football game, which was starting. And much like the parents before me, these events aren't hard to recall. They're stuck in your head. And so he left, but he was only gone about 20 minutes. And he came back through. And I was pleasantly surprised because, you know, when kids hang out, it usually is hours. And this was just no longer than 20 minutes. And at that time, I was looked up and the gutter had needed cleaned out, so I was getting a ladder. Jake was quite a bit taller than I. He was 6'2", 6'3", somewhere in there. And I said, "You're so tall, why don't you give your old man a hand, and you stand there and I'll just hold the bag and you dump it in there." And he said, "Yeah, Dad, I'll help you." He said, "Right now?" And of course, I said, "No, go in and warm up real quick. You know, I'll be in to get you in a few." So I waited a little bit, did some other things, and decided to go in and get him so I could get it done and we could sit down and watch that game. As I came in the house, of course, the first thing I did was put some of the condiments and things that he had out from the refrigerator. He loved his sauces, and put some of them away. And at that time, I peeked around the corner. He wasn't in the living room, but the TV was on and the game was on. So no cause for concern. Right then, the dryer went off, and so he was, I guess, kind enough at that age to do his own laundry. I figured I could fold it for him. So I folded his laundry, and I headed up the stairs to give him his laundry. And at the top of the stairs, there he was. My initial reaction was that he was goofing around until I seen the needle on the floor. And then it hit me. And I began screaming and begging for him to open his eyes. And I called 911, but there was no answer. So I called his mother and said, "He's finally done it." And she said, "What?" And I said, "He's dead." But he wasn't. As I seen his heartbeat, she hung up and she was going to call someone, and so I noticed what I thought to be a heartbeat. So I start CPR, and I'm blowing into his body so hard that his feet were coming off the floor, and I'm begging. I am begging for it. Jacob, just please open your eyes. I'm screaming. The coroner's office. At 5 o'clock, he was pronounced dead. And the external examination is that of a well-developed, well-nourished adult Caucasian male, 209 pounds, 6 foot tall. This was not a skinny drug addict in the middle of nowhere in an inner city. This was a very strong young man. A very strong young man. I learned from many professionals, Dr. Park included, that one of the things, and the parents before me mentioned it, is that if they are clean for a while and they do relapse, the tolerance they've built up to, they go back to that, and it is flat out, as you can see, deadly. Of course, the law enforcement and medical police people asked if they could search the premises to try to get a clue. All they found in that household was one needle, one kitchen spoon, and the Bic lighter beside him. Nothing else. The point is, and why I give you this story, as difficult as it is to recall, is you don't always know the signs. You think you are monitoring, you are amazed, and the key here for this awareness is how readily available and fast he was able to obtain it. I now know, because of some great kids who have opened up and let me in this kind of world, that it was purchased a stone's throw away from the police department in the Bryan Medical Group parking lot. This has been confirmed by 4 people. I didn't go by 1 or 2 when I started hearing the same thing. They've told me how you can go to Walmart and get it in the parking lot, CVS. A simple hand signal is all it takes. No words spoken. So I leave you with that story. And as I see some kids in this audience that I know are living some risky lives, think very hard. Because Jake's dosage of heroin, as I read it, was 0.18 and a lethal dose is 0.15. I talked to Dr. Park as well. He did not have the track marks. He had the single needle mark in his ankle, right ankle. The ruling of death was accidental overdose, heroin, combined with some alcohol. When I'm asked, what could you have done different? I could spend hours, but I guess my best advice to parents is to never underestimate it. Never underestimate it. And if I was guilty of anything, it was underestimating that power. And how easy it is to get anywhere you want. If you want to get scared, go on the internet and type in, where can I find heroin in Houston, Texas? They tell you, pick a city. Go home tonight and do it. You will be pissed, I hope. I sent the people of this, who arranged this gathering tonight, where they were selling in a McDonald's. They were selling it in the toys that you get from McDonald's, and all you said was, I want a toy, and they were delivering it right out of the McDonald's. It's scary. It is scary how easy it is. And the only way I think that we can do it is what we used to say a long time ago in teams and everything, and that's to take care of your own, which we are all here to do. Don't hesitate to question why that car just is sitting in that parking lot and 5 cars pull up to it and never really stop. Why one kid is walking around the parking lot and people keep coming up to him for one reason or another. It's those simple things, you know? And if you're afraid of it, let me know, because I will make sure. Trust me, it means that much to me. It means that much to me. Well, thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Jim, and thank you all for sharing your stories. We certainly understand it's difficult, but we do believe it's important for this community to hopefully understand the issues that those stories bring to light. Next, we have Rhonda Fisher, Bryan Municipal Prosecutor.
Thank you, Kirk. Well, you've heard some of the stories here, and I'm going to piggyback on that a little bit because I'm here. I handled all of the misdemeanors for Williams County. And I think there's a little bit of an attitude about the misdemeanors because people might think, well, it's just a misdemeanor. I just get a slap on the hand. It's just marijuana. But the problem is that these are the gateway drugs that we're dealing with. You heard Jennifer. Jake's story is the same. They started out with marijuana. Now, some people, they might be able to try marijuana and never move on, but many of them graduate from using marijuana to other types of drugs. So I deal with these issues that arise from what we call the gateway drugs: marijuana, spice, K2, bath salts, and the progression into the other problems that come from the usage of these drugs. The other side of the coin that I've been dealing with comes from consequences dealing with the meth and opiate usage. There are other crimes that affect all of us. Everyone in this room, everyone in this county. Homes are being broken into because the person is stealing whatever they can get their hands on, whether it be the copper wire out of your furnace, your scrap metal, so that they can go and sell that to get money for drugs. Sometimes it's because they have used and they just don't know where they are. I have had at least 2 victims who have woken up to find a complete stranger on the couch in their home. It's also concerning to me that we've had groups coming into Bryan, Ohio, standing out on our street corners, asking for petitions for people to sign to legalize marijuana in this state. We cannot allow that in our great state. We have got to get out there and fight it. Let me tell you, it's not really working for Michigan and Colorado, because those people think that, well, it's legal for me to use medical marijuana, but they're smoking pot and then they go out and drive, so they're getting citations for driving under the influence of marijuana, or they're smoking it around their children, so they get child endangerment charges. It's not legal to do those things, even if the marijuana itself is legal in that state. And let me tell you how else that's affecting you. Because the people who are smoking the pot and marijuana are driving across the border to Ohio. And I have had 2 cases in the last week of people who are using marijuana and smoking in Williams County and driving in our county. So it's affecting all of us. We've gathered in this forum to educate you, the public, about the dangers of these drugs, what to look for and who might be using, to help those who might already be using or family members dealing with a loved one who is using. But we want to send a strong message. If you take nothing away from this, please take this message. Don't start. As Mary Juarez said, we have to tell our children over and over and over again, don't start. That's my message. I recently was asked to attend by invitation the Governor's Symposium on Opiate Abuse. And one of the things that we learned with opiate use is that once the brain gets the taste of that, so to speak, it just wants more and more. And they used an example of a rat that they were training in a cage. And the rat was on one side, the food was on the other. They trained the rat to go over here and get the food. Then they put an electrified grid in between the rat and the food. The rat wanted the food so bad, it would go across that electrified grid to get at the food. This is just how the brain on opiate works. It wants it so bad it will do anything to get it. So you cannot start. And in that symposium, the governor came and spoke to us, and he said something that impressed me. I was shocked to hear this come out of a politician. And he said, I don't know what you believe, but here's what I believe. I believe God made us all for a purpose. I don't know why some of us fulfill that purpose and some don't. And we want to see people fulfill their purpose. And it's hard to do that with a drug addiction. And we want to work together so that everyone can fulfill their purpose. Please help us in this fight. You know, I've seen so many great things out of Williams County, our parks. People work together to build the Imagination Station. We've had a tradition of pulling together to help to do big things in Williams County. As you've heard, we've lost people to these addictions. We've had so many in the past few months that have overdosed, and we've been able to help them, bring them back in the nick of time, but some we have lost. I'm asking you to let's work together to become educated, know what to look for. Most of all, we need your help to assist law enforcement. If you see it, like Mr. Phillips said, please, don't stick your head in the sand. Help us. We need to eradicate the traffickers, those who are bringing it into our county. The bottom line is tell your kids, tell your family, don't start. Thank you.
Thank you, Rhonda. We have one more brief presentation by Dr. Park, our county coroner, and then we're going to open it up to questions.
They don't call me to ride in the parade. They don't call me when babies are born. They do call me when a young person, someone's son or daughter, has died unexpectedly. In the past 5 years, we have an increasing number who have died secondary to drug and alcohol abuse. Last year, a 26-year-old left his home area from another state and drug culture to live with his brother in this county and try to go straight. He was clean for about 2 to 3 months and made a weekend trip to his old culture and came back to his brother's house. His brother found him dead 2 evenings later. The scene was characteristic for overdose scenes, with a tourniquet, syringe, and a needle. A yellow liquid was found in the syringe and by toxicology was found to be heroin in the victim. Why did this young man, who seemed to have hope of recovery, go back to use again? And why did he die this time? Several of the other presenters tonight have mentioned that the tolerance is built up, and then with rehab or recovery, the tolerance is lost, and then they go back to using an amount similar to what they used before, and it causes death. We don't know all of what happens in those situations, but we know that some of the narcotics prolong the QT interval on the EKG, meaning they predispose it to cardiac arrhythmias or ventricular fibrillation. We know that narcotics in combination with alcohol cause respiratory depression and hypoxia, and then cardiac arrhythmias from that. It is postulated that heroin and other substances like methamphetamine and cocaine activate the dopamine brain neurochemicals which excite pleasure centers in the brain, which once excited cause a relative hunger for more and more. The once activated but never satiated seems to reinforce the principle for not getting started. We need to have more open forums like this so that this knowledge base increases, so that we spread it to our young people that they not start. Because when they put those foreign substances in their bodies, insurmountable changes take place in the way they think or act. And they may have death the very first time they use. We should have anger towards those who sell to others. And we should have enough love and concern for our own children that we are willing to go out of our own comfort area and talk to them about not using. We cannot be complacent as the death toll rises. The state coroner's motto is, "With God, all things are possible." It is my hope that with God's help, with education and communication like we're doing tonight, that we teach more people about avoidance. Experimentation on a limited fashion isn't the answer. And for some, it costs lives.
Thank you. All right. That concludes the presentation portion. I apologize, we're a few minutes behind, but obviously some pretty powerful stories. And next, we'd like to open it up to the panelists, questions to our panelists. And if you are up here, if you would just give a quick wave. If you are sitting down here, if you would please just stand, make sure they know you are here. You met Jim Phillips. We have Mr. and Mrs. Juarez up front here. Conrad Siebenaller, you met in the video. Jennifer Harold, you met in her video. We also have with us VHS Assistant Principal Mr. Rarig, sitting over here on the end. We have Sheriff Steve Towns, Honorable J.T. Stelzer, Common Pleas Judge, Honorable Stephen Bird, Juvenile Judge, myself, obviously. We have Rhonda Fisher, you just heard from, Dr. Kevin Park, Lori Bolton-Sell from Probation. Lori, would you give a wave? You're back here. We have John Schaefer up front here, defense attorney. Sarah Yosik, pharmacist, and Linda McDonald as a therapist. All right, who's got the first question?
My daughter's an addict, and she will soon be released from jail. I am concerned that she's going to use again. And I'm concerned as to how to prevent it, if there's anything I can do to prevent it. Given the fact that drug abuse is a mental illness, how do we go about treating it? If it is a mental illness, do we treat it like that? Do we treat it as a felony? Do we treat it as against the law? How do we know I have 5 kids and only one of my children are an addict. I have grandkids. How can I discern whether they're going to be addicts, since it is a mental illness and a disease?
Whoever would like to take that, go ahead.
She is going to be released. She will be released, you said, from incarceration soon.
Do me a favor, just step right up to this mic.
We do have a residential treatment center, Serenity Haven. Are you aware of that?
They won't take her back. She left. Like most addicts, they don't always want to be there. They don't always want to stay clean. Once you leave Serenity Haven, she tried to go back. They said, no, we stopped our program.
I don't know if that's necessarily true. Where is Ken Bond? We always reevaluate people.
Just telling you what I know.
Okay. When was that you?
We do take people back.
Yeah.
We don't always take, there's different circumstances for different people, but.
I'm just saying at the time I said no.
We usually will have people come in for an assessment, and then we reevaluate to see where they're at. If she's saying, I don't want help at all, I mean, you can't make someone go in.
No. She, at the time, she had wanted to go back again. I'm just saying, as addicts, Jennifer and Conrad both, I know both of each other, people, you too.
Yes.
When you're an addict, relapse is going to happen. It's just part of the recovery.
It's definitely part of it.
Part of it. Like with Jake, his relapse took his life. I don't want her to die. I don't.
Have her call, or you call us and set up an appointment before she even gets out. And we'll make sure that it's set up so that the day she gets out that she's being reevaluated. We have outpatient services also, residential. What is her drug of choice? Heroin. Has she ever been on a Suboxone program in the past?
She took Viteral.
I'm sorry?
Viteral.
Okay. But she will be clean now and... Yeah, go ahead.
I don't know your daughter specifically, but if she's going to be on supervision, we, as a probation department, have attempted to go above and beyond in getting grants for treatment programs, electronic monitoring programs, community service programs to help keep their time occupied. Our Serenity Haven Recovery Services programming is working very close with our department. We are no longer in the business of just monitoring to lock you up and throw you in jail. We are in the business of saving lives these days. And that's why we're having this. So it takes a team and it takes a lot of supervision, and it takes day by day. So if she's going to be on supervision at probation, either our department or at municipal probation, stay in touch with the PO. We have an intensive officer now who is supervising them very closely. It is a battle, and Jen can attest to that. She continues to battle that every day. And so we'll help you the best that we can, but ultimately, you know, the decision is going to be hers. But please believe that we have a team effort. So if we can help in any way, we're there. We don't sit behind a desk waiting to lock them up. So let us know what we can do to help, and we'll take it day by day with you.
Other questions?
Okay, this question's for Conrad and Jennifer. I don't know, this is something that's very dear to me, and I'm very passionate about this, and I see, we go into treatment, we do some individual therapy. 12 years ago, my life was saved by a group of people that were just like me. Would it be beneficial to you guys to have a place where you could go, NA meetings? Defiance County has something called the Fellowship Club where alcoholics go. Would something like that in town be beneficial to you guys? Where you could go, where people that think like you with your addiction, that are just like you, and you could go to meetings every day. That I have a problem. I know counselors have the best of intentions and they try very hard. But if you haven't been through what I've been through, I can't listen to you. Now, would that be something we could work for, and would it be beneficial?
How far away do I hold this thing?
Right up to your mouth.
Yeah, I think it does help, but I know there is some fairly local places that do that, and it's all up to the person. Some people AA and NA works for, and other people it doesn't. You know, once again, it goes back to it's all up to that person. But I think for a lot of people it is beneficial to do a meeting daily or 2 or 3 times a week, and it kind of keeps their mind straight. That's my thought on it.
Other questions?
Hi, my name is Michelle. I'm a grateful member of Al-Anon, which we now have in our town. Yes, we see, I've been in Al-Anon almost 30 years, and now I see as many parents as I do spouses or boyfriend, girlfriends. What I want to say, it is a family disease. It affects everybody in the family, from the grandparents here down to 5 and 6-year-olds. They know what's going on. Our program is based on the same 12 steps as AA. We meet weekly. We talk to each other 24/7 if need be. There is also a meeting in Defiance. We have flyers here that we'll put out back if anybody's interested. Anonymity is a very important principle of Al-Anon, who is seen in what is said in our meetings, person to person or over the phone, is held in the strictest of confidence. That's the way we can feel free to talk about our problems. Thank you.
Be a first with the second leg
I have a concern. I hear what you were saying about once the person's in legal trouble, you can find ways to get them into systems. But what does a parent do for someone who has seemed to escape all the legal ramifications and they are struggling to try to find help somewhere when the person refuses help?
They're in denial. If they're in denial that they have a problem, if they're in denial they got a problem, I mean, that'd be better one for the counselor, but we see that all the time in our work where, and it's a very difficult that's probably the most difficult hurdle to get over here, I think, is if the person doesn't realize they have a problem, then, it's very, very hard to help them. We're on the front lines every day. I guess I would take a quick second to talk about with law enforcement, and I've recently been at a conference with sheriffs from all over the country, and this is a national problem. It's not just a local, but the national people aren't going to fix it. The state wants to help, but they don't know how. It's going to be a local thing that we've do time and time again, and what everybody else here tonight has stressed is we got to keep them from starting. All I want to say is it's a supply and demand issue. If the demand is there, the supply is going to get to it. We've been fighting the supply for years and years. We've recently started our school program again with DARE, and I know some people may think it does work or doesn't work. All I know is we're going to do everything we can to try to help wherever we can. And again, with that program, we're going to try to start when they're young and go all the way through as long as we can. And right now, with our officers in the narcotics unit, the M.A.N unit is working harder than it ever has, I think. We've got Fulton County back in. We're going to hopefully have Henry County back in next year. And again, not to get off your topic, but we're out there every day and telling them, we want you to get help. We don't want to arrest them again. We don't want to have to deal with them again. But all in all, like I said, our officers are working as hard as they possibly can to help this problem, and we're doing it every day, day in and out. Whether it's the villages, whether it's the M.A.N unit, we're all trying to do the best we can.
I'm asking if there's anything a parent can do before it transfers onto it, if the gate is open to it. Stronger drug,
Can I speak to it? I'll keep this brief. I know everybody's getting hungry. I am too. I just want to encourage you as parents, as neighbors, as friends, as difficult as it may be, if somebody is in possession of a drug, contact the law enforcement. It is illegal, and we're not the bad guys in probation and in law enforcement. We're trying to tackle a problem here, and sometimes it takes getting us involved. At the felony level, yes, if they have heroin or cocaine, it may be a felony, but we have some diversion programs, intervention in lieu programs, where they might not even end up with a felony on their record. We try to get them treatment. I work with them in a program that we have through adult probation to try to get them into treatment, and the light at the end of the tunnel is to have that felony dismissed. So that would be my answer to you. If you see paraphernalia or anything, as difficult as it may be, especially when it's your own child, call law enforcement. They're here to help you, and there are programs available. We're not just looking at trying to stack them with all the charges that we can or lock them up. We're trying to get them the help, and it needs to start early. You can't wait, because by the time we're seeing them, they've been addicted for 10 years, and then we have a heck of a battle on our hands. So that would be my advice.
One more question, then we're going to conclude.
We talk a lot about enabling. If they come to your home and they're under the influence of alcohol or drugs, get on the phone, call the police. The best thing you can actually do is have a legal charge, because, like Lori said, they work with us tremendously, and that legal charge will get them to us. I've had people call the judge after they had the legal charge and said, I wasn't trying to get my son an OVI or whatever. I just want him help, and that judge will court order that person over to us, and then with that information we know that they have more of a problem than what they're willing to tell us, because they're going to lie to us as soon as they walk through our door. So it takes everybody, like Lori said, once they have a charge, then we have something that we have a pull that we can keep them into treatment, because then they get discharged unsuccessfully if they don't come back. So if they're here just on their own, they can leave at any time, and it's the toughest thing. It's the toughest thing.
Okay, one final question I want to grab.
I would like to know, I would just like to know, probation department. I know I have a granddaughter, she's a married girl. The probation department, they have to go in to be checked at every so often by the probation officer. These kids know, these people know how to get around those tests. I know it, and they know it, and some of the probation officers are working with us on that trying to understand that better. But you tell them when you're gonna have the appointment. They know. Anybody that knows, they get around that 2 or 3 days. I'm just asking for probation.
I'll respond to that quickly. We're aware of the games. We're not naive, and we do go to a lot of trainings. But we have gone to random tests. We're now assigning colors to them, and it's different colors for different days that they have to come in. They have to call in, find out if it's their color that day. We're aware. We're doing the best that we can. We also have had problems with urine tests, so we have spent additional money on getting saliva tests. You know, I'm not going to go into all the details about how they get around the tests, but we are aware of it. We're doing the best that we can. Thanks.
I will tell you also, just legally, what the probation department has been doing is we have probably 3 or 4 charges we filed this year with tampering with evidence. We are starting to file those charges if they tamper with their urine before they can come in. You know, Lori's not going into the gory details. I will just for about 10 seconds here. They strap bottles of urine to themselves. They insert them in themselves. A lot of desperate moves. Unfortunately, Lori has to deal with that part of it. I just have to
There's
prosecute
some places
it,
in town that sell synthetic urine too.
and that's true. That's true.
And don't frequent those places. I mean,
All right.
Anyway.
All right, that concludes our program for this evening. First, I want to thank all of our presenters for taking the time, and the panelists. Appreciate your efforts on that. Also, thank you to BMU for taping this, providing the sound equipment, etc., and also the Bryan Times for helping us advertise the event. We appreciate that as well. And most importantly, we can't thank you enough for taking the time to come out again. We didn't know whether we'd have 20 people here or 100 people, and this turnout is just, I think, says something about Williams County that is truly positive, and we appreciate that. Hopefully you've learned some ways in which you can tackle, or at least help us tackle some of these issues. Believe me, I think any of the panelists would agree we do not have the answers, and would look for certainly any help we can get. I want to mention real quick, tomorrow here at this same location is a presentation called Operation Street Smart. It is tomorrow here, October 10th. You can either attend at 9:30 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. or 12:30 p.m. to 2:30. The program was initiated in 2002. It provides current information on drugs, terminology, trends, paraphernalia, concealment techniques, and physiological effects. We thank you for attending this evening. Please be safe.
Wow. Sometimes that's the best way. That was powerful. Great job.
Just came out.
I might hit you up with deer hunting season coming up here. I can score that big one.
No one else with a pain in her eyes. And I talked with her, tried to